So this is my Saturday video today with Bandit. There he is. There's his nose. Boop, boop, boop. Hi BookTube, it's Kim at middle of the book march, and it is Saturday, March 27th, and this is my bookish week. And I've got Bandit today. Fortunately, he turned around so his butt wasn't in the frame over my shoulder, and he's hiding behind me, but I'll periodically do that so you can see his cuteness. That's pretty much his bed in the living room. It's our ottoman, but he's claimed it, so he gets to keep it. The guy's almost 14 years old with 3 legs. So anyway, what did I read last week? I read 2 novellas and 1 book. I finished 2 novellas and 1 book. So I'm going to talk to you about a novella first. This is my my most recent piece that I finished, and it is called The Wind That Lays Waste. And I'm going to try to pronounce these names. The author is Argentine, and her name is Selva Almada. The narrator of the audio, which is how I read it on Scribd, was Almarie Guerra, and the translator from the Spanish is Chris Andrews. This is a novella talking about only 4 people, 4 characters in the span of a day. Reverend Pearson and his daughter Lenny are traveling the countryside, a Spanish countryside, I believe in Argentina. And he has been a traveling Christian evangelist for many years, and he basically drags along his teenage daughter Lenny. She's a skeptic, she's bitter, she's a teenage girl, she doesn't want to be there, she has no choice. They don't have a home to go back to, so if they're not on the road, they're staying with friends. There is the car mechanic named Gringo Brower and his son/ward named Tapioca, who is the mechanic's assistant. So the story is that Reverend Pearson and Lenny are traveling the countryside to go and visit his friend, Pastor Zach. Their car breaks down, so they make it to Gringo Brower's garage, who tells them that he can fix the car, but they're gonna wait several hours. It's probably gonna be the afternoon. So they do. So it's basically the interactions and the conversations between the 4 of them. Reverend Pearson is a grossly out of touch, pedestal standing fundamentalist Christian preacher evangelist who's traveling the countryside with his job, as he says it, is to clean dirty souls. So he's trying to reach as many people as he can with the Christian message of Jesus Christ. That's all well and good, but the way he goes about it is he's completely removed himself from the daily reality of actual humans. And he has himself on such a pedestal because he believes in the depth of his job that he's completely out of touch with any other person. He has no idea what his daughter goes through. He doesn't have any concept of her life, even though she rides in the car with him daily. He's talking to Gringo Brower and Tapioca about salvation through Jesus, but he's never actually sat down and asked them questions about themselves, their lives, what they're about. He doesn't have the time to get to know them well, so he just launches into his speech. He's an archetype of the self-righteous evangelist who believes his message is so much more important than his existence, so that's all that he's about. There's so much opportunity for the author to develop that and to discuss that and to make that a commentary, and she does to a point. He is that archetype, but there's so much interaction that the length of this novella did not give the opportunity to complete. And this novella connected very tangentially to the other novella that I read in a weird way, and I'll describe that in a minute. But there's so much available to talk about that. I wish she had developed more, and in the space that she had, the writing was very plain, was very straightforward, not very nuanced, and I don't know if that has to do with the translation. It could be, and that's when I read a translated work, I always get suspicious. If I'm not loving it, is it because of the translation? It could have been gorgeous in the original language. I don't know. But this did not really get me, and it was an okay novella. But for this reverend to put himself, to pose as the person that he put himself out as, there's a point in the book where the veil is lifted and you see the reality. And that's my segue into the next novella, which is very weirdly a classic by George Eliot called The Lifted Veil. And this was written in 1850. I think it's 1850. And it's a novella about Latimer, who in the beginning of the novella is on his deathbed. And he was always a very small, sickly, sensitive child. He's now on his deathbed and he's telling the reader how he got to the place where he's at. And it's not a nice story. As a young boy, he was incredibly attached to his mother, very sensitive. She eventually, as he got older and was getting to the age where he needed to be sent away to school, I think around the age of 10 or 12, she kind of separated herself from him because that's what she did back in those days, because she wanted to push him into his own independence. He went away to school and became very ill. And after that, he was always sickly. He always believed he had kind of an ESP, or he could see the future or read people's minds. He always had visions of himself being able to do those things. And he always had a feeling of what somebody else was thinking and how they were feeling in a given situation. So as he grows and gets older, he has a brother who falls in love with a woman named Bertha, who he becomes engaged to. And Latimer is in love with her, and he sees her. She's beautiful. She's distant and cold, but he is seeing in her something that he's starting to admire. And he also likes that, or questions that he can't really read her mind. He can't tell what she's feeling, and that intrigues him. Eventually, there's a twist. The story becomes very cold and very dark, and it's called The Lifted Veil because Latimer finally sees who Bertha really is. And it's so interesting to me because there's a connection between The Wind That Lays Waste with the veil that's lifted on Reverend Pearson, and this story, The Lifted Veil, of what happens when Latimer eventually sees who Bertha really is. So that connection was interesting with two random novellas that I decided to listen to, but they were connected in a really interesting way. Basically seeing the reality of our own humanity and what we see in other people, or what we want to see, compared and contrasted to what people really are, or who people really are. So that was a very interesting connection. George Eliot's novella was much more successful for me. It wasn't wonderful, but it's George Eliot. I love the writing. It's a very short novella, so the story, there was a lot to the story and the space that it had, and it was very interesting. I really liked how it ended. I couldn't stand how The Wind That Lays Waste ended because it was just like, that's it. It just gets cut off right at the end. And it's definitely got some sort of a conclusion, but it's like, oh, there was so much more there. But anyway, so George Eliot's The Lifted Veil, much more successful novella for me than The Wind That Lays Waste. And the book that I finished last week is Heaven My Home by Attica Locke. This is the second book in the Highway 59 series, which is a mystery series, a mystery and police series centered around Darren Matthews, who is a Black Texas Ranger skating the line of being an alcoholic with a checkered past and a kind of a dysfunctional background, to say the least. I loved this book. And now this is a read-along with a group of people from our These Truths group who have splintered off into an Attica Locke group. The group is named Attica Locke because we plan on reading every single one of her books. And Bluebird came first, and then Heaven My Home is second. This is her most recent novel. She has I think there's three other novels, two of which are the beginning of a series, and another one which is a standalone, which we plan on reading as well. We'll figure out when. This took me 2 days. It was that good. I can't tell you a lot about the plot, but it's Darren Matthews, the same character. In Bluebird, he was involved in one mystery. In Heaven My Home, he's involved in something completely different. This has to do with a missing child, with a wealthy area in the South. His past and his background comes into play in a huge way. And there's a lot of discussion about who he is as a person, his career, his relationship with his wife, with his mother. There's so much here. The ending of this book blew me away because there's all kinds of connections back to Bluebird. A lot of family connections and parts of the mystery in that book, that Bluebird, it continues in this one. I love her writing. We are such giant fans of her writing. She is a screenwriter and has written several novels. She's so good. I love these books. It doesn't take any time to read it, and it's so much fun. It's so well written. She writes the connections in the stories so well. Highly recommend Attica Locke's books, and we'll see about the rest of them, her earlier novels. Where's Bandit? There he is. There's the back of his head. His little soft ear right here. He's so soft. He is he'll be 14 in November. He's a spaniel, kind of a Brittany Spaniel mix that we rescued from West Virginia. 9. It'll be 10 years in November. He's an amputee. He had his right front leg amputated after he had a birth defect, and then he was relinquished to the pound at 4 years old, and he was rescued by a woman who wanted to foster him. And she had a shepherd at her home, and they got into a fight, and he lost his front leg, but it wasn't really usable anyway. And we got him about a month after he had his amputation surgery, and you never would have known. He was so lively and fast and fun and loved to play and loved to chase tennis balls. But now he loves to lay on the ottoman in the living room all day and be petted and loved. So that's his hobby. Okay, I am currently still reading Roots by Alex Haley. This is for March of the Mammoths, and I am about a quarter of the way through. I knew going in that this was going to be disturbing because it is the story of Kunta Kinte's family and his life starting out at the age of 16 in slavery. And I knew it was going to be difficult to read, but I can only read a small piece of this at a time before I have to take a break. It's so raw and brutal and so, I don't know. On the flip side, even only a quarter of the way through this book, I think it's quite bloated. And there are points where Haley writes the trauma that happens to Kunta Kinte, and it's repetitive. It's one instance of the same thing after another, after another, after another. So we'll finish it. It might take me a couple of months to do it, but I am still reading it. I also am still reading George Eliot, Voice of a Century by Frederick R. Carl. This one, I'm on page 143 of a 643-page book, so I have 500 pages left. For Women's History Month in March, but again, this will be a carryover because I'm enjoying this, but this is a very dense biography, and it's super heavy. This is a hardcover, a previous library copy, and, embarrassingly, I actually ordered a used paperback to see if it would be lighter to hold because I can't really read this unless I'm sitting at a table with the book open and I don't have to hold it because it's super heavy. But I am continuing with this. It's also going to be an April carryover. So 2 announcements for the George Eliot 2021. Our selection for April is Adam Bede, one of her novels. The story of a beautiful country girl's seduction by the local squire and its bitter, tragic sequel is an old and familiar one with George Eliot invests with peculiar and haunting power. So Adam Bede is our novel for April. And this book has, she's got notes in here. This book has 535 pages. I have the Penguin edition. Print is kind of small. Yeah, it's actually pretty small. So it might not look long, but 530 something pages with small print, I'll read it in the month because it's George Eliot's writing and I'll probably love it. So that's what we're reading for George Eliot 2021 for April. And now, April 1st starts out my continuation of my Cromwell 2021 event, even though I gave up on the Thomas Cromwell biography by McCulloch, but we are going to start Wolf Hall in April. I've divided the three books in the trilogy into quarters to run through the whole year, but I'm going to start reading it in April. That makes it very doable with around 5 pages a day. Now, if any of my buddy readers are watching, I have to put the disclaimer out there that if I just can't stand this book by the time the month is over, I will have to discontinue the read-along and somebody else will have to take over, because I need to put that out there. This is a book I've tried to read several other times, and just, it wasn't the book, it was the time I was trying to read it. But I've held on to it and I want to finish it. So that's what I'm doing in April. I am so excited for April, and I'm going to show you why. It's gonna be pretty epic. All right, here is my April TBR. There are nine books in this pile. So, however, Wolf Hall is my Cromwell 2021 quarter read. So April, May, June that's split up. So that's very doable. George Eliot, Voice of a Century is a carryover for my George Eliot 2021. And of course we have These Truths. We're going to be finishing These Truths by June. Michael Christie's Greenwood. That is a buddy read I'm doing with Leo from A Little Book Life, and we're going to be reading that in April. I cannot wait to read this book. I'm gonna give you guys more details in my next my Bookish week on Saturdays for each of these books as I'm reading them. It's a gorgeous book. It's about trees and families, and I cannot wait to start reading with Leo. We are reading, here we go, Barbara Kingsolver's Unsheltered. That is a buddy read with Heidi from My Reading Life and Noel the Book Rook. And I've had this one for a while, and I love Barbara Kingsolver, so we're going to be buddy reading that together. That, of course, is Roots, a carryover. And this one that you can't see very well is Ann Tyler's Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant, and that is for the Barterhoids Backlist Book Club. Really looking forward to that. That's a kind of a contemporary classic of Ann Tyler's, and I've heard really good things about it. This little one, is Joanna Russ, The Female Man, and that is a classic science fiction novel that I'm going to be buddy reading with Britta Bowler. Again, can't wait. That one is gonna be the first couple of weeks in April. The second one from the top is My Brilliant Career by Miles Franklin, and that's gonna be an Aussie April pick that I'm buddy reading with Sean the Book Maniac. And the very top is George Eliot's Adam Bede for the April selection for George Eliot 2021. Whew. April is full. The schedule is full, but it is so exciting and it is going to be so much fun. And I have such amazing things to read and to look forward to, and so many amazing people to read things with. So I cannot wait to get started. It's going to be a blast, you guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think of any of the books. Let me know about anything. And that's about it. It's a great day here. We might take a road trip. So hope you're having a good weekend, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.